All right, let's just get right into it. Today, we are facing down the absolutely no-bluff reality of wealth creation. If you're a young earner who's just starting to see some real paychecks hit your bank account, or honestly, if you're just somebody who is completely exhausted by the daily rat race, this mindset shift is going to be absolutely critical for you. We're breaking down what we call the second rule of money. Now think of this explainer as your educational roadmap. Definitely not formal financial advice, okay? But a roadmap designed to help you understand exactly how real wealth is actually built behind the scenes.
So let's start with a really logical-sounding myth that most of us walk around believing. The myth is simply this: the more money you earn, the wealthier you become. Makes sense, right? But if you pause for just a second and look at reality, that equation completely shatters. I mean, we've all felt that sheer disbelief reading headlines about A-list celebrities, brilliant doctors, or, professional athletes who sign multi-crore contracts only to declare bankruptcy literally 3 years after they retire. It feels paradoxical. If a massive income automatically equals wealth, how is it even possible for these incredibly high earners to end up totally broke?
Well, the answer to that mystery brings us straight to our core thesis for today. Building wealth is rarely about the size of your paycheck. It is almost entirely about your deeply ingrained human behavior. Money amplifies your habits. It does not fix them. Think about it. If your coping mechanism for a really stressful week is ordering expensive takeout when you make $20,000 a month, handing you 2 lox a month is not going to magically turn you into a disciplined saver. No way. It just means you're going to buy high-end sushi and designer clothes to cope instead. And that, my friends, leads us to the stealthiest thief out there: lifestyle inflation. This is that incredibly frustrating psychological trap where your everyday expenses grow at the exact same rate, or sometimes even faster, than your increasing income. This right here is exactly why there are incredibly hardworking people out there right now who earn twice as much as they did 5 years ago, yet they're scratching their heads wondering why they feel absolutely no richer and no more secure than they did back then.
We've all been there, haven't we? When our income finally goes up, our ego just immediately kicks in. We tell ourselves, hey, I worked hard for this, I deserve this. So we justify buying the bigger phone, we convince ourselves we absolutely need to lease a flashier vehicle, we add on, 5 different premium streaming subscriptions, and we justify those 2 a.m. impulse buys. But all of these things quietly, stealthily erase the actual wealth-building potential of that hard-earned rising salary. You might be upgrading your lifestyle for sure, but your actual net worth, it's standing completely still.
Let's actually run a little thought experiment to see how this plays out in the real world. Imagine we have 2 people, person A and person B. Now they are totally identical on paper. They're the exact same age, living in the exact same city, working the exact same job, and they both take home a salary of exactly 50,000 rupees per month. But their financial philosophies are worlds apart. Let's track their very different journeys over a span of 15 years.
Okay, so person A follows one incredibly simple, realistic rule. They invest 20% of their salary right off the top, every single month. That's 10,000 rupees a month, consistently funneled into an investment yielding a pretty reasonable long-term return of 12% annually. It takes discipline, sure, but it still leaves them plenty to live on. Person B, on the other hand, spends absolutely everything they earn, 0 invested. They both operate under the exact same 15-year time frame, but with radically different monthly habits. Let's see what happens.
Over those 15 years, person A's discipline creates a cold, hard, mathematical reality. Month by month, year by year, without doing anything flashy or taking any wild speculative risks, they have quietly set aside a total principal amount of 18 lakh rupees. I really want you to appreciate that this didn't come from winning the lottery, it didn't come from inheriting a massive fortune. It came from 180 completely boring, repetitive, monthly decisions to save exactly 10,000 rupees. But here is where the absolute magic happens. The second rule of money in full effect. Because person A gave their cash time to grow at that 12% return, that 18 lakh of their own money has transformed into a massive financial asset. Their final corpus sits at approximately 50 lakh. That gap between the 18 they put in and the 50 they ended up with is entirely free money generated simply because a totally boring monthly routine was allowed to compound over time.
Now, let's contrast this reality with person B. Oof. Remember, person B earned the exact same income. They had the exact same raw materials to build a life with over those 15 years, but because they spent 100% of it, their investment corpus is almost 0. Think about the severe vulnerability there. After a decade and a half of grinding out a career, a single medical emergency or an unexpected job loss could completely wipe them out. They are essentially trapped in a cycle of continuous financial stress.
So what's the real takeaway here? The difference between having half a crore and absolute zero wasn't their paycheck. Not at all. They earned the exact same amount to the rupee. The difference was entirely driven by behavior, repeated every single month. Earning money only gives you the baseline potential to become wealthy. What you actively, deliberately do with it once it hits your bank account is what actually determines your financial destiny.
Look, your salary is fantastic for paying your current bills, keeping the lights on, and feeding you today, and creates opportunity. But it is your behavior that determines your long-term outcomes. This is exactly why a highly disciplined person earning $30,000 a month can practically guarantee they become wealthier over time than someone earning $100,000 a month. If the 30K earner consistently buys assets, while the 1 lakh earner consistently buys expensive habits and depreciating liabilities, the lower earner is going to win the game every single time.
Now, I know what you're thinking. The challenge here is that this goes completely against our human psychology. Our brains are literally hardwired for instant gratification. Tapping a screen to buy a brand new gadget at 2 a.m., that releases instant dopamine. But the habits that actually create wealth, honestly, they are completely unexciting. There is absolutely zero dopamine rush when you transfer funds to a boring emergency savings account. Setting up auto investments, saying no to impulse purchases, these are incredibly mundane tasks, but these are the essential, boring habits of real wealth.
And that's the secret right there. Financial success is almost always hidden inside these boring routines. The media loves to sell us this grand illusion that wealth is built on, one lucky crypto gamble, or timing the market perfectly on a single stock trade, or founding some unicorn tech startup. But for the vast, vast majority of financially free people out there, their wealth wasn't an event. It was built on quiet, unglamorous, everyday choices, silently compounding over a really long period of time.
So what happens when you finally get that long-awaited promotion and a solid salary hike? Well, the immediate instinct is to let lifestyle inflation just absorb the whole thing. But the hybrid approach is where true financial acceleration happens. You take a small portion of that raise to genuinely enjoy your life, reward yourself a bit, but you take the bulk of that new money and you add it straight to your monthly investments. Because you're already used to living on your old salary, that extra invested cash creates an enormous accelerated compounding gap over time.
Which brings us to this really cool concept of stealth wealth. Wealth is often created quietly while nobody is paying attention. Financial freedom isn't the loud, flashy public display of spending that you see all over social media. The person walking around in a plain t-shirt driving a 10-year-old car, they might literally be the millionaire, while the person in the brand new leased luxury SUV might be absolutely drowning in high-interest debt. True wealth is the unseen, ongoing process of assets growing silently in a portfolio.
It basically boils down to an unbendable law of physics for your finances. High income, combined with poor behavior, will inevitably bankrupt you. It really doesn't matter if you make 1 crore a year. If your emotional spending requires 1 crore and 10 lakhs to maintain, you are going to live in perpetual stress. Conversely, a moderate income combined with disciplined behavior acts as an absolute guarantee of future financial freedom. Sheer earning power will always, eventually, bow down to emotional discipline.
Honestly, I find this incredibly empowering news. Your future wealth is not determined by what you earn today, which means your financial destiny isn't entirely dependent on your boss or getting a lucky break or buying a winning lottery ticket. It is completely in your own hands. It is determined by what you repeatedly do with what you earn. If you can master your daily behavior and just check your ego at the door, the math is literally going to effortlessly take care of itself.
But mastering your behavior and actually saving the money, that's really only step one. What happens once those funds are actually invested? Well, in our next explainer, we are going to dive deep into the third rule of money, and we'll answer the ultimate financial paradox. When you're trying to build a massive corpus, will the amount of time you invest or the returns you chase matter more in your financial future? The answer is going to seriously surprise you. Until then, keep those boring habits strong.